KJ, I effed up. I'm sorry.
Not a problem.
I looked back and saw a link because I do go back and check. And I looked back and saw a link. I was like, okay, good. KJ got his link. Then I went to the next person. Okay, she got her link. Oh, did I give her the wrong link also? Give me 1 second, KJ. I want to make sure I didn't F this up royally. That sucks. I hope I didn't screw that up. No, she got the right link. Okay, good. She got the right link. Welcome to the show, man. How you doing today? You doing all right, KJ?
I'm doing well. I actually did want to respond. I was listening in a little bit early. It's early in the morning for me, but I tuned in a little bit early, and I was listening in on one of your guests. And I really want to point out, because I believe this show is committed to critical thinking. The guest made a really, really big error.
You mean Dimitri?
Yes.
I think you're probably going with Dimitri. Okay, go into it. Give me your take. What's your take?
Well, let me tell you what his error is. Is that he seems to think that the Genocide Convention obliges states to punish or take action against other states. And there is absolutely nothing in the Genocide Convention that actually mandates that. The first article is that says that states will punish and prevent genocide. And then it goes on to define what it means by punish. And it gives you the definition of genocide, and then it defines what you will punish. And then it gets down to the nitty-gritty about what it means to punish a state. And it makes it very clear that it is about punishing individuals. It also talks about undertaking legislation to punish individuals. It talks about having a trial for genocide. It talks about the need for extradition. And then Article 8 is where you call on the UN to take action. And Article 9 is where you request the ICJ to intermediate conflicts or interpretations, etc. And so there's absolutely nothing in the Genocide Convention that makes or obliges a state to take action against another state. The only thing that comes close is Article 8, and that requires that you go through the United Nations to take any action. So when Dimitri Lascaris or other people say, oh, they found for genocide and therefore countries need to do anything, no, you can't do that. You are violating international law. And not only are you violating international law, you're actually going against the Genocide Convention itself. Now, there is a body of international law which is about states intervening upon other states. And that is R2P, Responsibility to Protect. And that is a highly, highly problematic convention, because it's essentially the idea that Western states, it's been used for Western states to overthrow other states. So I don't know if Lascaris wants to go down the R2P area, but that is a can of worms you do not want to open. So, but all of this boils down to the fact, there are a couple of errors here. The key error, and it's a really important thing for people to understand, is people think that Israel is doing this genocide of, by, and for itself. This is not an Israeli genocide. This is a Western genocide. This is an American genocide. And Israel is simply the attack dog. The entire Western Empire is built on genocide from top to bottom. It's been a ceaseless stream of genocide, starting with the genocide in the Americas and in Africa, and then in Asia, and then post-World War II, we see the constant stream of genocide. Korea was a genocide. Vietnam, Southeast Asia was a genocide. Indonesia was a genocide. It's been one long stream of genocides. It's genocides all the fucking way down. And so when you think that Israel is acting by itself and all you need to do is constrain Israel, you've completely misread the situation. Let me give you an analogy. It's like this. You see an attack dog mauling a baby, right? And you say, why aren't you doing something? You need to stop the attack dog, right? This is terrible. And I agree. You have to stop the attack dog, or you should try. But guess what happens if you pull back and you go after that canine? What happens?
Well, they may have an owner.
The cop will shoot you.
You said the cop?
Yes.
Or the owner?
An attack dog, a police canine.
Oh, a police canine. I'm sorry.
If you get in the way of a police canine and you try and prevent it from doing what it's doing, what will happen to you? You'll get shot.
The cop is not going to be okay with their...
We've
seen it, right? Yeah.
The cop is not going to be okay. And so people who think that this is just about Israel and all you need to do is go after Israel and that'll be the end of the story, they don't understand the situation. They don't understand what's happening. They're trapped in a very narrow liberal mindset where Israel is this kind of bad apple, bad actor, and they don't understand that this is a large geopolitical maneuver that's happening on the part of empire, of which Israel is simply a subcontractor for that. So it's a bit like this. You know, Jamal, you're playing a chess game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And do you ever play public chess games?
Yes. Yeah. I played like gyms in front of a monster blitz.
Have you ever been in these games where you have some smart ass who gets behind you and says, Jamal, take their queen. You know, the queen, you have to take that. You have to do that right away. You know, and they give you advice, right?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yes. And what's your response to that?
I grew up in a barbershop playing, so you just ignore those people.
You ignore them, right? Because you have your own strategy and you've probably thought this out 3, 5, 10, 15 moves ahead. And you know that if you do this move, then there are an entire set of things that will happen that, you know, may or may not go in your favor. But the guy behind you who's giving you advice usually doesn't know what the F they're talking about. And also, and this is really important, they have no fucking skin in the game.
Yeah.
If they want to play that game, they should sit down and they should get in there. And this is the problem with people who keep saying that such and such country should do this, such and such country should do this. No, you need to get your government to stop doing something. Or you need to get your government to stop abetting and aiding and facilitating genocide. That's the issue. I'm talking about Canadians. I'm talking about Germans. I'm talking about Americans. It's your government. Well, what can you do? Well, what leverage do you have over your government or the corporations that are facilitating? Think hard about it. Where is your government getting their money from?
Look, KJ, I agree with you on this. I think I even made the argument after the fact that it's a difficult thing for a country to get involved when you don't know political consequences after the fact. But let's say China does get involved. Okay, now you're in a standoff.
China is involved. Let me point out, China is already involved, right? So you have these people saying, oh, you know, Yemen is the only country with moral standing. Think about it. Yemen is sending missiles. Okay, where is it getting its targeting information?
China. Yeah.
From China, right? Yemen doesn't have satellites. That targeting information comes from China. Okay, Iran was lobbing missiles into Tel Aviv, right? Does Iran have satellites?
I think they'd have one, but I know your point. They're using Chinese satellites.
Okay. China is sending weapons to Iran, right? They're sending, at the very least, air defense systems, right?
Right.
Also, well, people say, you know, China is doing trade. Well, every fucking country on the planet is doing trade with Israel. Okay. I think maybe one or two may have, you know, backed out, but almost every country. And, you know, the fact that you are doing trade the thing is that unilateral sanctions are not allowed under, under international law. You have to go through the UN system in order to impose sanctions. Now, China is doing trade with Israel, and it's doing a small amount of trade. None of it is in weapons, but it's also doing trade with Russia. It's doing trade with Iran. It's doing trade with Venezuela. It's doing trade with Cuba. It's doing trade with all the countries that are fighting the empire. Okay, so if you take that in the balance and you look at, where is the advantage, where is the disadvantage, I think the advantage accrues to the global South.
Yeah.
If you think about what are one of the key exports that Israel is involved in, what does Israel export? Well, one of its key exports is diamonds, right? It controls the diamond industry. That industry is being wiped out by China. China is destroying Israel's diamond industry. And that is billions of dollars that will not go into the Israeli war machine. Okay. So there are things that are happening, there are moves that are happening, but it's like the people who don't understand the game were just taking a glance at the chessboard and they're saying, you need to do this, Jamal. Jamal, you need to move your queen here and blah, blah, blah. They're people who don't know what they're talking about. And especially, somebody like, I have criticized lawyers in many different ways for many reasons, but essentially, lawyers are storytellers. Okay. They're not, when you go to law school, what do? You do case studies. Okay.
Right.
What is a case study? It's storytelling. It's a fancy academic word for storytelling. You look at a story and then you analyze the story. That's what you're doing. So lawyers are storytellers. Of course, there's some aspect of law which has to do with code. So it's like, coding, except that there is always interpretation involved with code, right? And then the other thing you do as a lawyer is you look for precedent, which is to say that you're looking at common law, you're looking at cases before you, you're looking at other stories, and then you're trying to say that this story is like the story that came before it. It's a kind of analogical thinking. It's not logical thinking, it's analogical thinking. So you're constantly making analogies and doing this kind of analogical thinking, which is why Lascaris seems to think that, the Genocide Convention requires states to intervene, but it doesn't. There's nothing in the Genocide Convention that requires states to take action against other states. It requires states to pass legislation inside their own country and to punish individuals. Let me highlight that. It requires states to punish individuals, not states. It requires legislation inside their own country. And anything other than that has to go through the UN. Okay. So it's a complete misreading, but you can see how, that this is being misinterpreted. But I don't want to go ad hominem on this, but Lascaris, is a corporate lawyer. He worked on Wall Street. And that isn't to say that you can't have a conversion. I mean, I know John Kiriakou, he used to be CIA, okay, but he denounced the CIA. But you don't see Lascaris denouncing, Goldman Sachs, for whom he, represented. He actually brags about it. He has his own website where he said he represented Goldman Sachs. He says he was the fiercest legal advocate for shareholder rights. So essentially, we're getting a corporate capitalist Wall Street lawyer telling the global South what to do in a chess game that they have no stake in. My argument is that if you want to play that game, you need to put something down. Solidarity means running the same risks, or at least putting something down. So, if you have, if you are paying taxes in Canada, then you need to think about where your taxes are going to. You need to think about what are the concrete actions that I can take to prevent my country, which is a direct participant and supporter of this genocide, from actually taking action? What can I do to obstruct that? Rather than saying third parties, countries that I have no influence over whose strategy I have no understanding of what they're doing, and just having this kind of emotional, outburst. I mean, they like to do this. I mean, there's an entire section of the internet where you have people, there's this Dutch psychologist who does this too. And they just have these breast beating, shriek fests. And I'm sure they feel better after it, but it doesn't make any difference. You need to do what is effective, and that requires taking real action, not demanding others take action.
KJ, I accept it. I do accept your take. And I understand your point. You've made it eloquently well. So just saying, I want to nail that down first. Your take is apt. Your take is valid. Dimitri may have been a corporate lawyer. Fair enough. But he's not coming from a bad place. You may think that what he's saying is off.
He needs to denounce. He needs to denounce those fucking corporations that have made him very wealthy and that he served for decades.
To be clear, I don't know anything about his wealth. I do know that he has put skin in the game and has risked his life doing news and media and going to Lebanon and many of these places where they nearly got killed in bombings by Israel.
Okay. So Jimmy Carter, right? He's doing a Jimmy Carter, right? So, but look, like if you're working at Sullivan and Cromwell, Wall Street law firm, if you're working for Goldman Sachs, if you're doing the IP of Allstate Insurance Company, if you're working for Siskins LLP, if you're working for the corporate fascists, the corporate overlord class, then you need to actually disavow that rather than, brag that you were the fiercest advocate for shareholder rights, for the capitalist class.
I get that. I mean, look, I don't know. I got to be honest with you. I don't know anything about Dimitri's previous history. I don't know his income
It's
status.
all up on his website. Yes. It's on his website. It's public knowledge. Yes.
People who do a job and who do that job well are going to feel some kind of way about doing that job. So I can't blame him for that. I can only go by what Dimitri is today and what he is now. He's not coming from a bad place. Look, I understand the defense of China on this. And I understand the defense of throwing it back on the person who was effectively putting it out. Fair enough. Dimitri has been one of the most aggressive critics and advocates for the Palestinian cause that you would find on the internet, even going so far as putting his body on the line in Lebanon and these areas.
I won't say that, but here's my piece. The analysis is wrong.
Fair enough. And you can say the analysis is wrong.
Because
China is doing more.
He thinks it's about Israel. It's not about Israel. It's about the empire.
I get that. But what he sees and what everybody sees is that, yes, the U.S. is behind the empire, but it's Israel pulling the trigger. And what they want is for Israel to stop. And whereas his analysis may be wrong, it's not, again, coming from a bad place. He's looking at the world and saying, how is the world okay with this? Even though you are correct that Western governments are the main sponsors of this, support this, back this. And even now, and they're just kind of turning their heads saying, hey, we don't like this. This kind of looks bad. Okay, but they still support it, right? It's like they're saying that just because they have to deal with the political reality of what's taking place in their territories. When you look at the world and you look at previous wars and you think to yourself, if this is a genocide and Germany was doing a genocide, if I'm a German citizen, for example, my government has gone rogue. Meaning whatever my thoughts are about what the German government is doing, the preponderance of the architecture of that government has been taken over by sociopaths and maniacs and have decided to use the mechanisms of state to go murder a lot of people. My tax dollars are involved. My wants are not listened to. There may be 5 of us. We are not listened to. What do you do when a rogue state has gone rogue? And that's the dilemma that people in the West are stuck with. What do you do when a rogue state has gone rogue? When you have no capability of affecting that state.
You do what is possible, Jamal. think deeply. What is possible? Where are the pressure points? Where are the ways that there can be real leverage? Because we are not yet in fascist Germany, right? And even in fascist Germany, there were Germans who resisted.
Yes.
There were
Yes.
Germans who resisted.
And they didn't matter.
Uh,
And they ultimately didn't matter.
They didn't matter, but they tried. And if enough of them had tried, it could have made a difference. But right now, we cannot fall back on impotence and say, there's nothing for us to do. You have to ask very clearly and specifically, what can be done?
KJ,
where is the funding coming from? Jamal, where is the funding coming from?
They are making dollars out of thin air.
It's also coming from taxes, right?
They're making money out of thin air. When we're at $37 trillion in debt. That wasn't money that came out of taxes. That was money that they conjured.
Jamal, it's actually 137. It's $137 trillion because they're pulling a little accounting trick. They're using cash accounting when they should be using accrual accounting. If you do accrual accounting, it's actually over $130 trillion.
So you're making my point. That wasn't tax dollars that made $137 trillion, whatever that number is.
Yes.
I'm saying when Putin made that speech, Putin made a speech one day that I thought was profound, that nobody picked up, nobody covered, where he said the United States conjured $10 trillion out of thin air and went to war in Iraq and Afghanistan. And he said, if you could do that, and every other country in the world can't do that because they can effectively leverage the fact that they're the reserve currency, then what does that mean for war? Like at that point, you can have private wars that the rest of the world effectively finances because you are effectively making money out of thin air. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Jamal, it works up to a point and then it breaks down, right? And that's why Trump is trying to put on these tariffs. That's why Trump is trying to shake down countries for every last cent that they have. So there are people who think in terms of like a kind of pure MMT type of a theory. They think, oh, money is just something, it's just a convention. We conjure it out of thin air. Much, much more complicated than that. If it were that easy, then the government wouldn't need to tax you. They'd keep you happy and they wouldn't tax you. They wouldn't be sanctioning and they wouldn't be levying tariffs. The thing is that even a debt is a promissory note of future labor. That there's labor that is going to have to be done in the future. Now, at the current moment, that debt is unsustainable and unpayable. But, and the only way they're going to get away with not paying it is more violence, right?
Yes.
More violence. But in the meantime, the circuit of money needs to keep moving. Money has four functions, right? It's a unit of credit. It's a unit of account. It's a unit of exchange, and then it's also a medium of exchange. It has all of these different functions, and people tend to confuse these different functions, and they think, oh, we just conjure it out of thin air. If that were the case, the United States would not need to be belligerent and bullying to other countries. It's only to the extent that other countries accept US dollars and that the US has the legal and political and military force to enforce it, that it can do those things.
Agreed.
But that force is waning. And in the meantime, the US still relies on taxes, right? So your taxes are funding the war machine. So relies on taxes, right? So your taxes are funding the war machine. So to that extent, then you can ask yourself, where do I have leverage? What are the different ways that I have leverage over this war machine? It's a question that everybody should ask themselves. There are different ways and different means. Everybody is a different individual. But you have to ask this question. Where are the pressure points on the governments, our governments, Western governments, Canadian governments, German governments, American governments that are actually funding and enabling the genocide. That's where you have to start to look. Not you don't look under you don't look under the lamppost just because it's brighter. You look under the lamppost where you lost the key, right? That's where you have to go. And so it's easy. Let's get away from these kind of easy solutions, these easy catharses, and look at the really hard work that needs to be done, including the hard critical thinking. The hard critical thinking means you don't wave the Genocide Convention around and say that it's going to do something that it doesn't. It doesn't.
KJ,
That's a
it sounds
fault in international law, but you can't wave the Genocide Convention and pretend that it's something that it's not.
fair enough. I accept that. I do accept that.
Uh-huh.
I'm just pointing out that, look, I get it, right? He's going after China, saying he doesn't understand why China is not doing this. And there are a lot of people who've made that argument. I think you and I have had that conversation itself.
Yeah.
And you fleshed out all of the things that China was actually doing
Yes.
in these kind of subversive ways, in ways that other countries weren't touching, weren't doing at all. And China's been this kind of advocate about this particular process. I accept that. I think
So
you're right.
we can move inside the constraints of the law, or we can move into kinetic action. But let me ask you, Jamal, do you think there's anything short of military intervention that can stop the empire at this point? Remember, it's not just Israel, it's the empire.
Yeah, but the immediate fire is in Gaza. Like,
Sorry,
I get your point. The immediate fire,
I
meaning
agree. I
what
agree.
what Daniel, what
So we
Dimitri
need to
was.
put it out. We need to put out the fuel. We need to put out the fuel that is.
KJ, it sounds like you're saying you shouldn't pay your taxes, which means people are going to go to jail. And you can say that's a protest, but individual protests don't matter.
No, I think it's a choice that everybody. I'm not saying that you should do this, that, or the other, but I think it's an analysis that each person has to make, and they have to decide what is the most effective way. What is the most effective way to prevent the genocide?
Only collective action. Individual action doesn't matter.
So it requires collective action. So then we have to ask what kind of collective action and where.
Well, there have been people who have thrown their bodies and have been beaten and put in a cage for it. This is kind of what I'm saying. You may say we're not at the point of Nazi Germany yet. Fair enough. But when 2% or when the opinion of the American public matters 0.0% or 0.1%, then you have a problem with the political space. The political space has gotten so much of a tin ear that it doesn't care. Now you can say people could go blow stuff up. You can say people should start shooting Congress members. You can say all that. But is that really going to change fundamentals on the ground when the U.S. is fundamentally invested in this idea of having its own aircraft carrier in the Middle East that it is sucked itself to in this way that this is a necessary thing for U.S. hegemony in this particular part of the globe? How do you stop the empire? And does individual action stop an empire? I'm very skeptical that individual action stops an empire.
So my answer to that is you do what you can, and you have the deepest, most thorough analysis possible, but you do not say that somebody else should do something. That's not helpful. I don't think that gets us anywhere.
Fair enough. I accept that. Again, I told you you're right. I agree with you. I don't think that you're wrong. I'm just saying I have a softer view of Dimitri. And from my point of view, it's not coming from necessarily a bad place. He is in a place that many people are, of something needs to be done. These people are being murdered. You can make the case that there's genocides that have been taking place all over the world. I accept that. This one is happening now.
I keep finding myself psychologizing a little bit, which I don't like. But I think there's a way in which people in the global north, in the West, feel this need to blame somebody else because they know in their heart of hearts that it's their government that is directly responsible, and therefore they want to blame somebody else for it.
Dimitri's not blaming. He's not blaming.
I'm not saying
This
Dimitri
is-
is doing that. I'm not saying Dimitri is doing that, but I'm saying that there are people that I have seen that just, they are part of the war machine. I was with a group of veterans for a while, and these are people who are veterans. They were not drafted into the military. They chose to go into military. They were part of the war machine. And now they're saying, well, such and such country needs to do something. Okay, that's fine. But what about your piece of it? What about your responsibility? I don't think we get anywhere if we try and offload responsibilities to other parties. The perpetrator does not get to shriek at the bystander while they are committing the rape, right?
Right.
You can't say, you must stop me. Everybody stop me. It's like Barack Obama saying, make me do something. No, it's your job, Obama, to do something. It's not. You remember that thing where he said, make me do it. You have to make me.
Jeff, what is it? What is it? Roosevelt. Also,
Yes,
apparently.
exactly.
That's what different. Make you do it.
So why you've been elected to stop the war, Obama? Obama was elected because people didn't like the Bush wars, and then he continued it anyway, right?
Right.
And for him to say, make me do it, that's a evasion of responsibility. And there's this constant evasion of responsibility. I think if people sat down and they thought really hard about who was responsible, I think that you would have an entirely different tack and an entirely different level of commitment. As I said, solidarity means running the same risks, or maybe not the same risks, but
risk
putting something down, put some skin in the game, right? As I said, it's like that chess player, somebody telling you what to do over your chess moves. No, you play the game. You put something down on it. I think that's what's missing.
Fair enough. I think I can't speak for everybody, but I think many people in the global north, if we want to call it the US, that or Canada, that have the sense that there is a loss of control in regards to the government space. That one of my audience members, they were like, "Guy, it feels like the world is turned upside down and right is wrong and wrong is right." And I was like, "No, it's not. You just have a bunch of sociopaths who run in the government who have created an overlay of reality that we are all functioning in. It's not the same thing as reality per se. But I can't speak for everybody. It's not an offloading. It's a desperation. It's a scream of desperation. It's a almost, in weird ways, a cry for help in a strange way. Because you're right, the genocide and whatnot is being committed, but it's almost like saying, I've lost control of my husband. Please stop him. It's that. And I get it from your point of view. You're saying, well, that's like the rapist saying, well, she had a short dress, so she deserved it. I understand the point. Like, it's not for her to wear a long dress so you don't commit rape. Just like it's not for the U.S. and people in the U.S. to say, hey, somebody else needs to help and stop our government because our government has gone mad. But what if we're right? Our government has gone mad. It's separate. And I get your point. Collective action, individual action, you do what you can as an individual to try to change the situation in the context. You put skin in the game in regards to risks. Martin Luther King put his life on the line constantly in regards to the risks that he was willing to take. What is his name? The other Congress member got beaten on a bridge in order to create the larger phenomena of, oh my God, that's outrageous, where you can shock the conscience of a nation by effectively putting your life on the line. I get it. I do get it. I do get it. I'm only trying to point out it is not coming from a bad place. Some people may take it to a bad place and blaming China. Fair enough. Those people are wrong. And those people, I would wager to you, don't know what you just told me in this particular interview. So fair enough. You are right.
They also don't know about the rare earth elements, which are essentially depleting the U.S. arsenal.
Yeah.
That's a really big deal. Okay. But the thing is, Jamal, I don't think it's helpful for people to tap into the belief that they have no agency, right? Because once again, this is the ideology of the oppressor. They want you to believe that you can't do anything. They want you to believe that you have no agency. They want you to scream and shriek and blame others and ask others. And they want you to blame, Russia or China for the genocide, when they know deep inside that they're the ones that are committing, they're the ones perpetrating it. So right. I think that you shouldn't go down this road where you say, oh, there's nothing we can do. We have no agency. there are 1,000 times during the day when you probably say that to yourself, when you say, I have no agency, when actually you do. It's just that you haven't explored it. Okay. And there is something that you can do. And if you start to explore that tiny, crevice becomes bigger and bigger. And then you can see that there's more types of agency. And then the key thing is to understand is that you shouldn't act by yourself. You have to act with other people. You have to act collectively. But once again, that again is the ideology of the oppressor. The oppressor wants you to think of yourself as an individual and only as an individual. And there you're already trapped. So you have two things going on. One is this ideology of the individual, which thinks that you can only function or act by yourself. And then the second part, and the two go exactly together, is the belief that you have no agency. Because this is true. If you only try and act as an individual, you won't make a difference, right? Your vote doesn't make a difference. Your actions don't make a difference. But if you kind of open the scope a little bit and think about what can I do collectively, then you can start to make a difference. And that's very, very different from, just kind of screaming and having a bawling fit. Fine, have that. Have your catharsis, okay? But after you've done that, start to organize. That's the key piece which is missing. Have a critical analysis, understand the situation, and then start to organize and take action collectively. There's so many things that could be done. I mean, think about all these tech companies that are providing the data and the AI and the targeting for the genocide, right? I mean, all of these are American companies. There are actions that can be taken, and and they're much, much more effective than just kind of shrieking into the void.
Fair enough. I do get it. Like I said, I do get it. I agree with you. I don't disagree. Trust me, if I did, I would say so. I understand your point. And you did and gave a fantastic breakdown of what China is doing to push back on the critics that claim that they should be doing more. And I think I was talking to another guy, so it feels weird, like making that argument, like somebody else should get involved with something that your government is effectively doing. The government is committing a genocide. It's like somebody else needs to help. I do get it. I do get it.
And also, I will concede, I understand the urgency because we are seeing a genocide. So, whatever is being done is not enough. Certainly it's not enough. More needs to be done. And everybody needs to do more. But, people who think that it's just about third parties, third countries having to do something when there is no legal, there's no legal foundation for them to do that, short of waging war. If you think that it's about waging war, then we're running into an entire different set of trolley problems. Essentially, we're looking at the ultimate trolley problem, which is that we're going to face nuclear war. Remember, this is a genocide being enacted by two nuclear powers. Israel is a nuclear power. The U.S. is a nuclear power.
Right. I don't think they were talking about war. I think anybody I've ever heard talked about this talked about in the sense of gas being cut off, for example, from Turkey, resources being cut off from China, resources being cut off. Basically, countries having a trade embargo in the way they had with apartheid South Africa.
Yes, but Israel is not South Africa. South Africa was isolated. And by doing a trade embargo on South Africa, you could effectively bring the country down. Yeah. To do a trade embargo on Israel really means to do a trade embargo on the United States. Yeah. Right? That's what you need. It's much, much bigger. Israel is not an isolated South Africa. It is essentially the attack dog of the United States. And unless you understand that, you're going to have a completely misguided analysis. It's like, why don't you just, cut the tail off the dog? The tail is wagging the dog. No, because if you cut the tail off the dog
will bite.
the dog will
Yeah.
bite you.
The dog
Right.
bites. KJ, this has been a fantastic breakdown. This wasn't anywhere near where it was going to go, but I appreciate your passion on this because you gave a fantastic breakdown of what China is doing, and you put it in a package in a way that, because it was interesting. I think I had you on the show once, and I said China seems to be Armageddon, or not arming, but giving them targeting data in order to hit their targets, and it's like they were doing sheepishly, like we're not really going to admit this, but just know we're here. So you're right. They are involved in this stuff in more ways, in more of a subversive way. No, you're right. Agreed. And I
Jamal,
appreciate the breakdown.
it is really, really unsatisfying because we're facing a genocide right in front of our eyes. We're seeing it every single day. And whatever is being done is not enough. But I want to throw it really back on the people who say that they're concerned about the genocide. What is it that you can do both individually and collectively from inside the belly of the beast that could actually make a difference? Ask that question over and over again. And as you start to ask that question, different possibilities will arise. And I assure you, they're much, much more effective than shrieking and saying third parties should do something.
KJ, you're fantastic. You're fantastic. I disagree with you on Dimitri. I greatly disagree with you on Dimitri. But I understand your take and I understand where you're coming from with it. Thank you for this. Honestly, fantastic breakdown. It's a necessary thing because the question gets asked a lot. And to have a video where it's packaged to explain this is what China is doing is a beneficial thing to the ecosystem that we inhabit. So thank you for this, man. I appreciate it. KJ, no. Oh, you came in hot, KJ. I don't think I even gave you an introduction. Fair enough. I like you fired up, dropping F-bombs. Usually you're far more moderated. It's like, they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. I love it. KJ, no. He is, where is it? He is, there it is, specialist in geopolitics of the Asia-Pacific region. He is contributor to the book, Capitalism on a Ventilator, once censored by Amazon. It is now available at iacenter.org. You can also find KJ on Breakthrough News Network under the China Report. I'm actually look that up today, KJ. I've tried a new leaf of writing down questions for my guests and having a title already set because it's taking too much time to try to process these videos. This one is pretty straightforward. KJ, thank you for this. You be safe, okay?
Thank you.
Have a good one. Thank you. All right. KJ came in